Cybercrime is the world's third biggest economy. Every company is affected. This is big, important stuff. And nobody's taking this seriously.
Jeremy, you are downloading an app. Suzanne, what do you do?
Jeremy, no! How useful was it? Zero use. Fun though. Really hurt him, I think.
Orange Cyber Defense.
Hello, everyone, and good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you're based, and welcome to our webcast. My name is Medina Maglione, and I work in global marketing at Orange Cyber Defense. In today's session, we're going to talk about the SASE framework and how it's evolving. At Orange Cyber Defense, we're seeing more businesses adopt the SASE framework from a security use case perspective, focusing on business needs rather than on its connectivity capability. Now, to shed some light on the direction in which we're going, I've invited a couple of expert colleagues to explain and clarify everything about the SASE framework and where we are at this stage. So I'd like to introduce our speakers today, and I'll invite them to put their cameras on and unmute themselves. We're going to start with Emmanuel David, who is also going to moderate the session, the panel. He is Global Product Manager. He's part of the global service lines at Orange Cyber Defense. Rob Peters, who's Global SOC Lead Architect for SASE, and David Andrew, who is a Senior Partner Consulting, leading on all things SASE data and networks for the Nordics, and he's part of OB, so he's bringing the perspective from Orange Business. Please note that the session will be recorded, and I'll probably be sharing this by email after the webinar, once the webinar is over, probably tomorrow. And we have also saved some space for taking your most burning questions at the end of the panel. So if you do have any questions you would like to ask to our experts, I really encourage you to take this opportunity as they're here for you. And they will obviously will do their best to try and answer as many questions as possible. So I think we're ready to start. Emmanuel, if you would like to take over.
Sure, Marina. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session. Yeah, SASE is something we are talking about for some years now, something like 4 years or so, which was really that concept that Gartner brought to us about bringing together network and security technologies and doing all of that out of the cloud. We are some years later, and we've seen different evolutions in actually different directions. If we take it from the network side of things, we had quite rapidly actually an adoption on the SD-WAN technology and a lot of deployment which have been made. But actually the security piece took a bit more time to actually get together and come, and that's one of the action that Gartner took some years later, is to redefine SASE as a combination of SD-WAN and SASE technologies, where you combine things like indeed web gateway technologies or maybe CASB technologies and actually the replacement of VPN, so ZTNA kind of solutions. But it went even further than that when you look at it, that actually it also started including digital experience management and other side features, I would say, or remote browser protection, that are actually adding more and more with time functionality to that overall concept, which is nothing else than reviewing the way you architect an IT environment so that you can support your business users. Because at the end of the day, that's what you're trying to do with SASE. And that is really the evolution of what we did in the past, of having everything that data center and being data centric, protecting all those resources within that data center. And now you taking a step back and looking at that from the end user point of view, so user-centric approach, and having solutions that can support the user in any place he might be and with whatever device he might use at some point in time. We've seen also on the vendor landscape an evolution into that. It used to be really separated still between the network vendors and the security vendors. We've seen a lot of activities in last years on the subject, and I would say a lot of them have taken over some companies to have more and more a full SASE story at some grades, let's be honest. But enough said for now. For that introduction, I'll hand it over to my colleague Rob, who's a global architect, to tell us a bit more his point of view on how SASE has evolved in the last years.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel, and good morning, everyone. So I think what Emmanuel already hinted on is that convergence is the key word around the evolution for at least the last year, maybe probably the last 2 years already, both from a functionality perspective and a technology point of view. So from a functionality, you see a gathering of functionalities to definitely on the SSE side to increase the security controls, to have a more mature posture possibility that can be created in that regard. And from a technology point of view, is being seen as one of the key man in the middles, basically, to be able to protect your user, the cloud, and the data, the applications residing in your data centers. What we're seeing on the Orange Cyber Defense side is that the focus is very much on the SSE side. So everyone seems to have at least some level of one capability, obviously already, but definitely already done quite a lot on the SD1 side. But we see a lack of maturity around security in many of the organizations we speak to, and SSE is definitely one of the low-hanging fruits to solve many of those challenges. However, it's not a one-size-fits-all type of approach, and we'll tell you later on what the best practices would be around implementing this in a successful way. What we see in our in the conversations we have with our customers a lot is that there's a missing SASE strategy, so an holistic view on it. There's very often a drive from a technology point of view, but people and processes are not being taken in consideration, for example, and you see failing introductions of solutions like this. So what we advise our customers is to really take a step back and look at it in a total picture and then roll it out step by step throughout what we call a journey. It's also a mindset, in my opinion. It requires a different approach to security, a different approach to how you look at your infrastructure, and it becomes a C-level discussion as well. I think David will explain a little bit more about the ROI, for example, that comes with this. But it's really important that this discussion is being had not just on the infrastructure level, but really on the total business and looking at the value that an organization can have by implementing these tools and mindset.
Thanks, Rob. Let's maybe have another view at the evolution of that SASE market from David from the Orange business point of view.
Thanks, Emmanuel, and good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. Yeah, I just support some of the comments Rob's been saying there. You know, SSE is the main adoption trend. Fully agree with that. I think SASE is moving beyond the Gartner view to what we're calling SASE 2.0, and we're guiding and coaching the market now on what that means and where it's going. When we step back, I think what we're seeing is today customers are dealing with an increasingly complex threat landscape. People are the new perimeter, and I think there's a lot of hype that we're seeing in the media around AI, and the cyber criminals embracing AI and the tools associated with that. And what that means for reality on the ground at organizations today is that the barriers to entry to become a cyber criminal have reduced. That means the volume of attacks are increasing, and they're coming from different source countries now, because more people are entering the cyber criminal world. Additionally, around the volume, we're seeing a change in authenticity. So the ability to use AI to create very authentic ransomware attacks and even now negotiate in local culture is starting to kick in. So what we would call the softer countries that have traditionally had barriers to entry because of language or culture, such as Nordics or Japan, they're now starting to see an increase in volume of attacks, and customers are concerned about that. I think the other reflection I'd share is almost every customer we talk to today has got a major issue with the cybersecurity talent shortages. And that's impacting the ability to scale the investments that they've made in Zscaler or Palo Alto or Netscope, etc. And that's a real frustration and a real challenge which needs to be addressed. Another point I'd share is, we look at a lot of threat-based research in Orange Cyber Defense from our 18 SOCs and 14 cyber SOCs. And an observation or insight we did from 2022, we looked at over 200 enterprises that had high-end security monitoring. And what that showed was the average cost of a breach, 6.1 million euros. And that's obviously significant. And it's starting to be an ROI conversation with the CEO, because one or two breaches start to have a significant impact on a business in terms of business disruption, in terms of potential brand deterioration. So it's a major concern, and I think now's the time. Our message to customers, it's time to get really serious about SASE. Unfortunately, we see very few customers that have really adopted an holistic SASE strategy, and we would really recommend that's an important thing to consider right now as you embark on your SSE SASE journey. I think the other thing, and I think Emmanuel, Rob, you both mentioned this, is we're seeing the convergence. We're seeing the hunger to look at vendor consolidation, and that's important. A lot of customers today have got 10, 15 OEM vendors in that environment. What does convergence and vendor consolidation give? Well, clearly it's going to reduce the complexity around operations. It's going to give cost savings. It's going to give efficiency improvement. But it's not just about that. We think there is a pivotal shift towards what we call a platform play and getting to business value realization. And we're starting to see that in the market. And we're starting to see those messages coming from some of the key vendors that they're seeking that. It's more than just a convergence. I think those would be the key messages that I'm seeing at the moment, Emmanuel.
Thanks, David. I guess based on the different elements you both brought up, we need to also look at it with a new approach and a new way to evolve into that domain. So Rob, can you maybe share with us how we should then consider those projects?
Thank you, Emmanuel. Absolutely. So I think initially when this came about, SD-WAN was the primary focus. And as mentioned, this has definitely shifted the other way. Currently, our customer and prospects, about 88%, the story starts with SSE. And what we see is that the majority of the companies lack the skills and experience to execute on even just the full SSE side of things. So while there are exceptions on some high mature secure companies, most of them won't be able to fully embrace the SASE story right from the get-go. So while it's important to have a holistic strategy, it's also important to have a realistic time schedule across multiple, maybe even multiple years for some of the companies to have to be able to implement these functionalities and making sure that the users get used to it and understand what the importance of this is as well. So part of this that we advise is to really set out a best practice journey. We have a lot of experience with that nowadays with our customers. We have a lot of discussions around that. And one of the key elements for me at least is that the focus should also be on the people and processes. Again, as mentioned earlier, there's a lot of companies that buy the software, try to implement this, and maybe only use the capabilities it harnesses for about 50% or even less. This also has to do with the adoption towards the people within the organization and the challenges that come if you want to move too fast. So it's really important that you drive that in a gradual pace. Part of that is the aim to that is to optimize the platform. So the platform play that David was hinting towards, we really are. It's our advice to really look with experts to see what is possible to drive the discussion and to drive the optimization of the functionalities that you have already implemented. Don't just rush into other functionalities if you haven't optimized the capabilities around that yet. One of the interesting things is that the majority of our customers are using are focused on 2 out of the 3 use cases. So there's secure internet access. So this is mainly focused on securing your users through things like CASB and SWIG. And then you have the secure private access. This is all about the application, zero trust network access, etc. And those are the 2 main use cases that we are seeing that our customers want to start implementing. But one of the things that we are highlighting to them nowadays is that 80% of the attacks and the exposure is on cloud assets actually. And we think that needs to have a higher prioritization within the journey, within the setup. It's sometimes a more complex one as well, but it is important to address that inside the initial strategy, because the cloud is the one where we see the most attack surfaces still being unguarded and malicious intenders going about to get what they want. So it's really important to have the right strategy and the right setup, and Orange Cyber Defense and Orange Business can help you with addressing those needs.
Thanks, Rob. And David, indeed, from Orange Business point of view, do you agree with those different elements Rob mentioned? And do you have similar conversations with your own customers?
Thanks, Emmanuel. Yeah, I'd agree with a lot of what Rob said. I think just to emphasize again on cloud as the dominant attack vector, I think all of the research we're seeing from Orange Cyber Defense, but also from all the other independent research from the vendors, it's all a very loud message, all consistent, that cloud is the dominant attack vector, and that needs to be addressed. So I'd really support that key point. Agree. I think most of customers really are looking at SSE first. Generally, it's a SWAG, zero trust. That's where a lot of customers are focusing as their highest priority. My other reflection is that I think there's still a bit of an old school historical way of looking at investments, and the traditional historical infrastructure procurements that have occurred in the past for on-prem, that's sort of tainting a little bit around where to go next. And we would just guide, try and break free from that. Clearly, there's TCO conversations historically to be aware of, but don't let that influence and take you down the wrong direction of where you're going to go with your SSE journey and with SASE. Excuse me. So I think that's a key point. Don't let that influence your future vendor preferences and your roadmap. Keep an open mind. Step back from the silos, step back from the intracentric approach. That would be key guidance. And again, coming back to the SASE strategy, it needs to be vendor agnostic. It needs to be decoupled from history and start to look at where do you want to go as an enterprise-wide organization, and try and ensure that C-suite are involved and sponsoring the journey, because it's not easy. ROI, absolutely. I think we're going to see more and more of value realization and the ROI dialogue with the CFO. It's becoming more and more relevant. We're also raising the importance of trying to prioritize and look at co-developing SASE use cases that deliver real business value within 6 months. There hasn't been enough of a value realization discussion historically, and I think that's going to start to change. Other points, I think we're also, from an OB, we're starting to see some conversations moving beyond just the SSE focus. I fully agree with Rob. Generally, the market's looking at SSE as its priority, but we're also starting to see some customers that are starting to become a bit mature around their SASE roadmap of saying, okay, what comes next beyond SD-WAN? How are we going to start to leverage our existing vendor footprint and platform play with the SSE journey? How can we now combine that with network overlay? And we're already in some of those discussions, and I think that's going to continue. So I think just highlighting, it's moving beyond just the traditional historical SD-WAN. Customers are starting to want to know, okay, I want to know what comes next. How can we combine and look at the full SASE agenda? The other thing I think I'd just raise is the cybersecurity skills gap. It's causing a lot of pain around scaling, and I think we're starting to see the demand to look at what are the alternatives. And a lot of customers are traditionally, it could be in-house, they've got their island, but the in-house skills is not really enabling them to scale. So we're starting to see the hunger or the appetite to look at co-managed and managed services, looking at the real hunger to say we need access to contextual data analytics. We need insights from what you're seeing in your SOCs and cyber SOCs. We want to have more insight, and I think that contextual data is going to be key. Finally, I think the other thing we're seeing from an OB perspective is China. China is coming into the conversation again and again of where to go with networks, where to go with SSE and SASE. And I think what we're generally hearing is many customers saying we don't really know where we're going to go with China. We've got a merger and acquisitions traditional strategy. We may need to divest, we may need to invest. Can we have a network SASE solution which can accommodate? So we may want to ramp up, we may want to ramp down. Orange, what can you do to address that whilst giving us potential scale that we need? So I just want to flag, China, very much a hot topic. We're hearing that multiple times in our conversations with customers at the moment linked to SASE.
Absolutely.
Thanks, David. And maybe to add to what you both said, one of the things also we should not forget with the SSE evolution is the bringing together of all those technologies into one solution typically. So we use, like you said, David, we used to have a lot of vendors we had to deal with, which means that companies had to deal with those on contractual level, on operational level, on knowledge level, and with the skill gap, that's really a challenge. But now that we have those SSE providing us solutions to have them typically in one solution, that help us, I would say on both sides, so from the customer point of view, but also from around cyber defense, to have one consistent way of approaching security, one consistent way of configuring it. And we want to keep helping our customers doing that. Because yes, it is cloud-based typically also, but that doesn't mean it's easy to configure. It doesn't mean it's not security. So it is still a complex matter where experts are needed to make sure that you make the best use of those technologies. So I think that's another important element to mention. And another thing is that given it is also concentrated into a common solution, it will help also on the deployment and I would say the build-up of the roadmap that we can do with those technologies. Because it's easier when it is just one solution to indeed extend the use case you can support with those technologies than having to have separate products to do that. So that's another thing which is coming as an advantage in those approaches. And let's not forget another element which is something we actually see as being true, because you probably heard a lot of marketing around that topic, that actually the performance impact is not as we used to know it in the past. So in the past, we had a lot of separate solutions, and the more we were adding security functionalities, the more it was impacting the performance of the end user. We see with the SSE technologies that actually sometimes it even improve the speed of really the transactions that a user is trying to do. Which is completely new to the approach of security as I've known it for years. So that's also an interesting evolution, I would say, of the security market in that matter. But yeah, I guess you heard for now enough of what opinions are on this. Let's maybe reverse the discussion now. So we'd like to have your opinion, the audience, on different elements. Because we do understand you have interest in SASE, otherwise you wouldn't be here, I guess. But we'd like to understand what's your actually main driver into considering a SASE framework and a SASE approach. So we have different options for you. Is it the reduction in operational complexity and the vendor consolidation we were talking about? Is it addressing the gaps in the attack surface from the different vendor silos I was just talking about? Is it the lack of in-house cybersecurity skills that actually motivates you to go into that direction? Is it just the pure optimization of cost? Or is it the user experience improvement and indeed the business value enablement you can gain from those new approach and new type of technologies? So I would say I give you something like, I don't know, 30 seconds. I guess it's enough. You have to select one of those as your really main driver. And then we'll discuss after that what you think about it. And for those who are already ready, please don't hesitate to raise questions if you have any, so that we can cover those at the end of the session. Let's see. So the first element you mentioned was reduction in operational complexity and vendor consolidation. I'll give first comment on that one. I guess you somehow confirm what we addressed already a few times actually today, which is that the more products you have, the more complex it is indeed to gain one consistent security approach to all the different activities you're trying to achieve as a business. But Rob, do you have maybe another view or interpretation on that result?
So I'm actually a little bit surprised here that user experience and business value enablement is second in that regard. And I would have guessed that optimization of cost is something that is very much on the forefront of many of our customers. So I'm quite happy to see that this is an important topic, and I tend to fully agree with it as well. I think. Yeah, what we're trying to highlight indeed, like take the step back, look at the total story and see how this enables the business and what the value it is that the SASE can bring to the business as well. So I'm really happy with what I'm seeing here.
Good. David, maybe a comment on this?
Yeah, no, I really like the result, to be honest, because I think the key thing we're definitely seeing is customers are saying to us, we've got too much operational complexity. We've got too many vendor silos. It's not working for us. We need a better way. We've got to escape from this patchwork mess of silos and get more efficiency into our operations. So, that's hot. And I think we're seeing that in the voting result here. I really like the fact that we're seeing user experience and business value. And to me, that's connected to the ROI conversation. What I'm hearing a lot from customers is, they bought the Rolls Royce, they've bought a full functionality of a software vendor solution, but they cannot scale and get the functionality deployed, and they can't get an ROI on it. So to have that as a priority, I think moving forward is absolutely key. I'd fully support, I really like the feedback that we're seeing here, and that supports the guidance and coaching that we're guiding our customers on today.
Excellent. Thank you, David. So I guess that, we can now move on to actually what we think about the evolution further, because we commented a lot on the state of the market on SASE, but actually that session is called SASE 2.0, and maybe it might be interesting to move on to that piece. What do we mean by that, and how do we see things evolving within the SASE world, knowing that indeed it is not in isolation of the rest of the security a customer is trying to do. But David, can you maybe share with us what is indeed the evolution we see in the SASE world and technologies?
Absolutely. Thank you, Emmanuel. So I think we're going to have a slide popping up on screen in a second, and I think I'm going to try and link this slide back to the feedback we got from the polling results. So what we're seeing here is, on the left, we're trying to summarize our observations of what we're seeing in the market today, or some very common trends, which is there are talent gaps, there's scaling challenge issues. It's still quite an infra-centric conversation. lots of vendor-specific silos, and that's creating frustration and not really a heavy business value realization discussion right now. And I'm hoping that's reflected in the polling that we saw just now in the results. So where do we go to? Where's target state? And I think the orange vision and where we're trying to guide is look at the data ecosystems. And there's a need to really aggregate those data ecosystems, which it could be Splunk, it could be Sentinel, it could be Zscaler, Palo Alto, Netscope, it could be multiple. And those aren't technology challenges. To get the data ecosystems aggregated, to have proper data governance, to have a proper data operating model across that environment is really, really important in order to get that data at scale feeding into your operations. And then our view is with the aggregation of those data ecosystems, then bring some contextual AI augmented analytics in. So bring the insights that we've got operating for 8,700 customers today, coming out of our 18 SOCs and 14 cyber SOCs. And it's not just our contextual data. What we're looking to do is collaborate in this ecosystem world with our partners. That could be Palo Alto Unit 42, it could be Zscaler, it could be CrowdStrike, it could be Netscope. It's complementary. We're not in competition. And there's a real urgency to bring that collaborative insight view into the conversation because the attack surface is getting more complex. What do we mean? Well, for example, if we suddenly see in South America an attack on an industrial factory from a ransomware, being able to have the insight from that attack and make it available to our customers across the world in a timely fashion, so measures can be taken to lock down and address the risk. That's key right now. And we see as the attack surface becomes more complex, as the AI augmentation from the cyber criminals grows, that's going to be important. And then finally, to the right, target state for us is how do we address those skill gaps? And we believe that where it's going to move towards is a risk-based cybersecurity operation target state, where the low-end manual tasks have been automated, freeing up FTEs to focus on the high-end decision-making in operations. And that decision-making is complemented or augmented by AI prompts. So you're going to get better, faster informed decisions. The human will always be in the loop for high-end. They're not going to get replaced, but you're going to deal with the low-end commodity operational tasks, get them automated. So that's our approach. We believe that target state is in-house, have your own island. That's not really is a recipe for success long-term. So through co-managing or through partnering in managed services, tapping into scale, tapping into the augmented analytics, and enabling you to scale up to risk-based cybersecurity operations, that's where we see the future.
Thank you, David. Let's now get back, actually, I would say, to reality. We've discussed the evolutions and a view on the future too. But let's maybe get back to reality and concrete case we actually did on the subject. So Rob, can you share with us that concrete case I'm talking about?
Absolutely. So one of our first references is a customer called Stolt-Nielsen, and Stolt-Nielsen is a transportation company for chemicals and bulk liquids in general. And one of the things that we did with them is go through let's say a full assessment on their needs. They had a scattered one and some immature, well, maybe immature is not the right word, some security controls that required some improvements. And they were very much looking to consolidate and optimize cost as well. And what we did together with this customer is went through, let's say, basically taking a step back. There were a couple of compelling events separate from each other, very much from an infrastructure point of view. And what we did was we looked at the total picture, moved the most important business of the most important use cases. We prioritized them, and we moved forward on setting out a journey for them, which in this case meant setting up a full SD-WAN solution. This was based on the flexible one from OB on Fortinet, and in this case we used the SASE partner called Netscope. We had some compelling events why we made these decisions, and these could be separate for any of the companies, could be different for any of the companies that we're dealing with. So keep in mind that there's plenty other reasons to go with any of the other vendors, but in this particular case it was Netscope. And we went through this with them and set up initially the zero trust network access for their applications. That was their main priority, to also replace their current VPN solution. And as we speak, we are going through a journey with them to start optimizing the security around their users. So really make sure that the internet access is properly sorted. And the third step will be the cloud-based approach. So this is a very typical approach that we see with many of our customers.
Thank you, Rob. I guess we can now move on to some key takeaways for you. And one of the elements we somehow what was underneath most of the things we said was that there is no one single SASE journey. So as a provider and to support you into that journey, we have to be flexible. So there are a lot of vendors present onto that market. We are willing to really support you with the major ones. There are different level of knowledge which are actually needed to have a successful project like this. We mentioned business knowledge, we mentioned network knowledge, we mentioned security knowledge. It's really the combination of those that make it successful. Don't take it as just a pure one domain only technological project. And the way you want to also operationally work with those kind of technologies is also another thing that actually you have to build up within your strategy. So do you want to run everything yourself because it's in the cloud, or do you want to have a partner to help you doing that? How do you fit that within your organization? Because if you're combining network people with security people, maybe these are separate teams. So how do you organize that? So all of that needs to be looked at, and for those reasons, we as a provider need to be flexible to support you into this. But you as a company probably also need to revisit the way you function internally, and you want to handle those kind of technologies. Now, next to that, let's not forget that at the end of the day, what you're trying to reach is actually to work on the customer experience. And what we mean by customer experience is actually your internal customers, because at the end of the day, it's your business users that you'll be supporting with this, and you have really to do an internal analysis, and we can again support you in building that to make sure that your SASE strategy is built on your business and not on the technology capabilities. So from the start, just mention and define the business outcomes, and there are different level of business outcomes. It can be what a user is able to do at the end of the day, but it also be on a financial level. What is the financial outcome you expect? So the ROI discussion that David was mentioning. And let's not forget, a lot of this is related to security, and security doesn't make any sense if you don't have the proper risk management in place. So there, I think it's really important to link all those activities to your risk management. And as was mentioned in our future vision, the more we'll be improving into risk management, into automating information around risk management, the better we will be in operations of those technologies too. And the last element is the value add beyond technology. So again, we don't believe that technology is enough into this. Rob mentioned people, process, and technology. It's true with any security solution, really. No technology will solve anything by its own. So it has to be combined with the right processes in place and with the right people supporting this. And it's only then that you gain the right benefit for the deployment, that you gain the right the benefit when it's running, and that you make sure there is a continuous improvement related to this. Because we all know the security landscape keeps evolving, and it's evolving really fast. So we have to make sure that those technologies stay relevant at any time, really. So that today, for example, in a service around SASE, we are already making sure that we inject automatically for you all the knowledge we have on the threat landscape so that you get automated protection. But we want to do more than that in the future, so that at the end, as David was explaining, we can do much more than that and really automate the whole data context around your business to make sure that, again, all those technologies are relevant. With this, I'd like to conclude this discussion for now. And maybe if you want to have more information after this session, we have an interesting white paper for you. So please have a look at this one. But I guess it's time otherwise to take some questions, because I understand there were some questions that were raised. So,
hi everyone.
Welcome back, Maddie.
Yeah. So we got some questions, and I'll start with the first one, and I think Dave can take this one. Can you please elaborate on the platform play? What is it?
Yeah, the platform play. So I think context is most of the customers we talk to today have got quite an extensive environment of 10 to 15 plus OEM vendors. Gartner is very much pushing convergence and vendor consolidation. And I think what we're seeing in the market is, classically Palo Alto, Netscope, Zscaler are all talking about wanting to converge onto their platform. And it becomes an ecosystem conversation or end state. Now, I think you'll hear many in the market talking about it's all got to converge onto one platform. The view I personally take is I think that might not be pragmatically the target state. I think realistically, it might be consolidating to 2 to 3 platforms from 10 to 15. The extreme view is it should consolidate to 1, but I think that's unrealistic in many cases. For me, vendor consolidation and convergence, it's around reducing operational complexity and cost savings, but the platform play is slightly different. It's around how to enable the business, how to bring in ecosystem partners and get to an ROI conversation rather than just let's squeeze cost out. So it's an enablement, getting to an open platform that can plug in a number of different ecosystem partners and players as needed to meet the business need. I hope that explained it.
Next question. Do you mean a single or multi-vendor strategy? Maybe Emmanuel, you can take this one.
Well, that's a question we have since, I guess, 4 years in the SASE world. The expectation back then was that it would be a one vendor story. We are 4 years later. It is not fully. I mean, Gartner did publish recently, so in the summer, the first ever full SASE vendor quadrant. So we're getting there, and there are vendors supporting that today, for sure. But yeah, as I was saying, we're getting there. So I guess today it is still a multi-vendor discussion, but as was mentioned a few times, you have to pay attention though. You really have to see which use case you'd like to support. You really have to see where you're starting from, and somehow the improvement and consolidation aspect are things you should consider to make sure that you have, a better consistency I was talking about. So yes, today the reality I would say is that in all cases we're still talking about multi-vendor, but it's really a limited set of vendors we're talking about now. It's not the 10, 50 we were talking about during the discussion. So yes, probably 2 or 3 maximum might be considered, but actually we're getting closer and closer to actually considering one. And actually, we already have projects which are just running on one, to be honest. So yes, it is possible today to also run on one. But yeah, you have to see really on case by case what is indeed the exact need and the exact use case that needs supported. And we as a provider can support both scenarios, but in any case, it should be less than the current state.
Thank you. Next question is, Rob said 80% of attacks on cloud assets. Can he define what sort of assets he's referring to? User accounts, applications, etc.?
No.
Rob, how
Yeah.
can you answer that?
And David, I'm going to ask you to support that as well, since we both looked at the research in that regard. But from what I got still from the top of my mind is that it was very much from an application point of view. It also had a lot to do with the misconfigurations that we see in the cloud a lot, and that there's very little checkups being done on those. Very often in the private environment, the on-premise environment, we're seeing much better configuration hygienes in that regard. Also, DevOps was a real challenge there as well, where let's say the lack of processes around and the security tools that were seen as preventative from doing their jobs on the DevOps environment really made it relatively easy to come in through those type of environments as well. Are there any other topics, David, that you can remember that were driving this as well?
I think it's more a case, Rob, that clearly a lot of enterprises are looking for a multi-cloud strategy. So they're going with, AWS, Azure, GCP, could be Alibaba as well in Asia and for China. Now, what that creates when you've got DevOps and you're spinning cloud environments up in test dev up and down, there's constant change. And when you're getting such constant change around your cloud assets, it's creating risk, it's creating the potential for errors and mistakes. And the cyber criminals are targeting that domain. So it's a very clear message when we look at all the research from multiple independent players, they're all loud message. Cloud is the major attack vendor.
Thanks for that, both. Next question is, what is your advice for having an ROI conversation about an SSE solution? What principles can I use? Dave, would you like to take this one as you covered ROI earlier?
Sorry, just say that question again, please. Maybe I didn't quite hear it.
No worries, sorry. What is your advice for having an ROI conversation or conversion? Could that be? There's written conversation about an SSE solution. What principles can I use for having an ROI conversation about an SSE solution?
Yeah, I think the key message would bring CFO in early and start to broaden it beyond an infra discussion around how do we look at the overall organization, how do we look at risk, how do you look at business enablement, and okay, how do you now bring it to pragmatic reality? Our view is get into SASE data use cases, make it pragmatic. How can you target an ROI within 6 months? And so it becomes really tangible to the business, to the CFO, and you build momentum for your SSE roadmap journey rather than just being seen as a sort of a cost burden. It's got to deliver tangible results. So the orange approach is, and Rob and I are working on, we've got a number of SASE use cases, which are generic, cross-industry, but where we want to go is to co-develop the SASE data use cases with customers in your specific industry and help you get to an ROI within 6 months.
Okay. Hope that should clarify. Then I have, next question is, what are the most common journey starting points? Feels, Rob, you would like to go for that?
Yeah, yes, please. And I like mentioned earlier in the conversation, it's very much the on-premise approach on the data center applications. So the zero trust network access, that is one where we see the most being driven from. It's very often a very simple infrastructure request around replacing VPN, for example. The other one is securing the internet access for the users. So really the endpoint enablement of the security controls through SWIG and CASB, even RBI. Those are, let's say, the main ones. The one that I would want to highlight that surprised me when I really started getting into this is the compliancy side of things. We have quite a few customers that are being driven from an auditing and compliancy point of view, where their whole external auditing is completely red, and they need to put in some sort of security controls in order to meet the compliancy that they've set out to achieve over the years. So we see a hard pressure on the compliancy part of it as well, which becomes really challenging once you have geopolitics involved in it around China, for example. So this is something I would say that's a top 3 journeys, starting points that we're seeing the most, and depending on those, we have specific paths that we would advise in driving those discussions as well.
Thank you, Rob. Next question is, as SASE is a cloud-focused technology, sorry, will it also contribute to on-premises infrastructure?
Yeah, that's something we could talk about for hours, I guess. There is indeed the idea, and I mean, that's the way it was really launched. It was only cloud-based. But the reality is that we still need some on-premises elements indeed, for sure. And it's really the combination which makes sense. And there again, I think, and we've seen that in quite a few deployments in the past, that actually no one is throwing away the on-prem elements because they're starting with SASE. So it is really, and that's why we keep talking about the strategy. It's really something you should build a roadmap on and see indeed, depending on the use case, how do you evolve to something which is using probably indeed more and more the cloud. But I guess it's the same discussion as we had in the past with just infrastructure as a service. Yeah, let's just go to the cloud. Nobody fully did. I mean, or some did and then went back. So we have to really be cautious on that it really depends. There's no single answer to that. And we have really to consider, I would say that the partner you will choosing in that matter is important, because if you have someone who's only specialized in SSE, he will not be able to help you into that. So I guess someone who has experience with on-premises solutions and with cloud-based solutions like SSE is probably what you're looking for to make sure that the transition is as smooth as possible and makes the most sense for your business. Let's not forget that. So it's not a philosophical discussion, I would say. So no one is better than the other. It has just to be the best fit for what you're looking for.
Emmanuel, I'd also add on that point that I think the reality today is most customers, that they're not going to go to 95% plus cloud native. The reality today is there's lots of legacy applications, mainframe and other application candidates that simply are not going to be able to fit in the cloud, and the investment budget isn't there to do the transformation to get those applications cloud native ready. So the SASE SSE strategy, and I keep coming back to the importance of getting a proper comprehensive SASE strategy in place up front, and it's not happening yet. If that's done, SASE has to also address on-prem as well as cloud native, because that's the reality today. And so, you know, that hybrid world of on-prem and cloud native, it's going to be with us for a long time, and SASE and SSE must accommodate it.
Yeah, and to add that from a little bit more of a technical point of view as well, what we're seeing recently within our vendors is that they're developing services that, while they're being managed from a cloud perspective, they also have the capabilities to be run on-prem. So the policies that were enforced only from a cloud point of view are now being enforced inside the infrastructure of an organization as well. So not everything is being backhauled to the cloud anymore if there's reasons to stay on-prem, for example. So even from a technology point of view, you see that on-prem is getting even more important than it was before.
Thanks for that. I think we have time for 2 more questions. I think the first one is quite straightforward. Which vendor did you choose for SD-WAN and Stolt-Nielsen use case, Rob?
I guess I forgot to mention it. Apologies. So the SD-WAN provider was Fortinet for Stolt-Nielsen.
Right, and then one last question is, what about enterprise license agreements like Checkpoint?
That's yeah. I would say part of the context of a customer, really, because we see enterprise agreements not only with Checkpoint, we've seen that with Microsoft, we've seen that with Palo Alto, and so on. I mean, I could go on like that. All major providers do have that kind of license agreements. And the idea is that, yeah, you have really a pool where a customer can just pull out anything he might need at some point in time. So from a commercial point of view, it's easy to understand for the vendor point of view. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that provider has all the right solution for that customer. So I think, coming back to the point of David, the strategy is key here. So for sure, vendors have all really nice, interesting technologies, but at the end of the day, they have to make sense. And that's only with the strategy and with identifying the right use case and the right ROI, as we were talking about, that you can really make the right choices. So for sure, one way to buy those elements can be a license, an enterprise license agreement, because it's easier indeed to buy, and we can even mention the marketplace for that matter. But is that a good enough reason? You have really to consider that you have to make sure that your business user are being served with that solution, and that the whole security strategy you're having around this is consistent, and it's not so much how you buy it that will differentiate that.
We're back to that classic point I raised, that don't let the past color where you're going to the future with your vendor selection. Get the SASE strategy right first, which should be agnostic of the underlying vendors, and then it will naturally take shape what your roadmap should be. And if you've made a heavy investment in the past on Checkpoint firewalls on-prem, that doesn't mean that that's the right solution for your overall SASE strategy moving forward. And you need much more of a holistic approach, is our guidance, if that helps.
Yeah, and one last comment to add to that is that make sure that you optimize what you buy. So there's a lot of, let's say, licenses being pushed into those type of agreements that very often are not being utilized in the long term even. Yep. I was involved in a couple of specific deals where we made specific agreements with vendors where we said, okay, this is the full, let's say, roadmap of the SASE journey of the customer. We are interested in looking into like a larger license type of agreement, but let's split the pain of the cost. So maybe in the first year, don't charge the full amount of those licenses, but only, well, I even had situations where we did that based on usage. So we defined the usage with the customer, and then the customer was paying for the usage they had in the first 2 years, for example. So that there's a lot of flexibility if we come up with the right strategy for the customer, and yeah, vendors are very willing to think along on how to improve that optimization as well.
Thank you. So we've come to the end of our session. I really want to thank Rob, David, and Emmanuel for taking part. I think it was really insightful. I hope everyone that's been watching enjoyed it as well. If you need any help, you know how to reach out to us. We've got also a generic email, which is info@orangecyber.com. We are, as mentioned, this session was recorded. I'll be sharing the recording probably tomorrow by email, so watch out for an email. And if you do have any colleagues as well who would like to take part in another live session around SASE, we are hosting another webinar on the same topic or same speakers as today on the 25th of October. And I'll mention that in the follow-up email as well. So if you want to forward that invite to any colleagues who you think would benefit from the session, from the live session, please do so. Thank you so much again, and I wish you a great day. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Yes, bye-bye.